morning and welcome to our beautiful center, the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Bonnie Rose, and it's great to see all of you here today on this incredibly gorgeous day. Isn't it beautiful outside? And we use this opening to be receptive to the words of our sacred reading.
Taken from The Fifth Agreement by Don Jose Ruiz. 2,000 years ago, a great master said, "And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. The truth is what you are." The next step is to see the truth, to see what you are. Only then are you free. Imagine living without fear, without judgment, without blame, without guilt, without shame. Imagine living your life without trying to please other people's points of view, and not even your own point of view, according to your own book of law. Imagine how different your life would be if you lived with gratitude, love, loyalty, and justice, beginning with yourself. Imagine that just being yourself, you are happy, and that wherever you go, heaven is going with you because you are heaven. Imagine living with this kind of freedom. Yes, the truth will set you free. And so it is.
And so it is. And so it is, and so we move into that place of remembering the truth of our existence, the truth of the absolute reality that encompasses all of us, that we are a part of, that we are drops in this ocean of the absolute. And that thing that we are is beyond words, but perhaps we can begin to open to the presence of it as we sing together, "I am remembering who I am," knowing that I am is another name for the absolute, for God, for love. And so together we sing. We remember for ourselves, but we also remember for the entire universe, that every being, seen and not seen, that everything living and not living, everything is part of this magnificent I am. And let us sing. And resting in the absolute I am, as the absolute I am. Let us bring this awareness into our open-eyed state as we breathe in deeply. And then exhale, opening our eyes in love with what is, as it is, and so it is.
I paused in the light of morning and let you shine on me a while. I could feel your power upon me, and the sweet warmth of your rays, they made me smile. And all the blades of the grass stood shimmering as if they understood. To be effortlessly bathed in your blessings is very, very good. And so it is, and so it shall be. We don't have to justify any more than the lilies or the field or the bird in flight has to bloom or has to fly. They do it 'cause they're called to. They do it 'cause it's what they've come here to be. And the moment you serve your own heart is the moment you are free. How strange that we toil and labor in guilt and blame and compromise, driven by the voice of doubt which drowns out what the inner truth belies. If we could just breathe and feel and listen to the lover's constant beat. God's the host of this great banquet and has invited us to eat. And so it is, and so it shall be. We don't have to justify any more than the lilies of the field or the bird in flight has to bloom or has to fly. They do it 'cause they're called to. They do it 'cause it's what they've come here to be. And the moment you serve your own heart is the moment you are free. There is enough, and there is time. There is no need, only endless supply of the good that surrounds us. And it's so freeing to know that we're loved and here to navigate the river of well-being. And so it is, and so it shall be. We don't have to justify any more than the lilies of the field or the bird in flight has to bloom or has to fly. They do it 'cause they're called to. They do it 'cause it's what they've come here to be. And the moment you serve your own heart is the moment you are free.
So what a beautiful day it is, isn't it? Just a gorgeous day. I'm speaking about this featured book that we have today. It's called The Fifth Agreement by Don Miguel Ruiz and Don Jose Ruiz. You've probably heard of the Ruiz boys. Don Miguel is the father, and he's got two sons. One is Don Jose, and the other, I can't remember his name. But anyway, has anybody here read the Four Agreements? Right? A lot of you, right? And the Four Agreements are great. Should we have a pop quiz? Who remembers what the first agreement is? That's the fourth one. Okay. I think it's recycle. No, it's be impeccable. Be impeccable in your word, right? The second agreement is don't take anything personally. Right? Feel free to jump in if you know these. The third one is don't make assumptions. Good. And the fourth one is always do your best. Yes. I often find that the one that I forget is the one I need the most, you know? So anyway, they wrote this book about the Four Agreements, but evidently there was a secret fifth agreement that they didn't want to talk about quite yet because they didn't know if we were ready for it. The fifth agreement is kind of esoteric, and it deals with absolute reality, and it took me a while to really figure out what it was. And then when I read it, I figured, well, this congregation is ready to hear about the fifth agreement because we talk about this stuff all the time. It's basically about non-duality and about understanding, if we can, understand absolute reality. So the fifth agreement is this. It's be skeptical, but always listen. When I first read that, I just read it in the table of the contents, and I said, be skeptical. What is that? All the others are so like perky and happy and peppy, but be skeptical? And then I read more about it, and it's be skeptical about the stories that you tell yourself, right? Anybody familiar with the stories that you tell yourself, right? Okay. No, never. Okay. Yeah, that we're all constantly telling ourselves stories about how things are, when in truth we don't really know how things are. We know our perspective of how things are, but that may not be the absolute reality of how things are. And so the fifth agreement encourages us to be skeptical. I may have trouble saying skeptical the whole time today. At least hopefully this time I won't say speculum instead and then have to explain to the band what it means, you know. We've got doctors in the church now. They can take care of that. Yeah. So it's to be skeptical about our stories and to hold them up against the light of absolute truth and then see where that takes us. And I find that when I'm skeptical about my stories and hold them up to the light of truth, first of all, I start laughing at myself. And then I find that this doorway opens into greater magnificence than I could ever possibly imagine. So that's what I want for you this morning. That's what I want for all of us, is that greater magnificence that is even more than we could possibly imagine. So about this absolute truth business, what the heck is that? What is absolute reality? We talked about it in class the other night, and I was moved to say, imagine that you know somebody who was born blind, and imagine that you have to describe the color blue to someone who was born blind. Would you be able to do it justice? Probably not. It would be hard to describe the color blue or the color pink or any color to somebody who was born blind, who has never seen it. And that's kind of like the way that we explain absolute reality, in that we don't really quite have the words to capture it. It's more efficiently or elegantly held when we listen to great music, Margaret, when we listen to wonderful poetry. It opens something up in our hearts, but we don't really have words. But words is how we communicate, so I'll try and give you some of the words that I use to try to describe absolute reality, even while knowing that my words do not really do it justice. One might say that absolute reality is an amazing source. It is the emptiness and the fullness, the emptiness from which all of the fullness came. You could say, as several great writers have said, that absolute reality is a circle. They said God is a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. See if you can wrap your head around that paradox. Absolute reality is this unbroken wholeness. It is this sphere of unbroken wholeness with no boundaries where everything belongs, and it embraces both the darkness and the light. Ultimate reality is ultimately good. Absolute reality is ultimately good. Even though sometimes from our perspective we can't see how it's good, there is a pervasive goodness that abides in the entire universe. And absolute reality. In the song that we just sang, it said, I used to think that God was the sun, and God is the sun, but God's so much more. But the sun is, I think, sometimes a good analogy, a good tool for pointing towards absolute reality. You know, the sun shines, and that is true. That is truth. The sun shines. And yet, our experience of the sun always shining changes based on our position in relation to the sun. So the sun is absolute reality. Our position in relation to the sun is relative reality. Imagine the cave people, you know, the first people that could actually think and formulate thoughts and have fear. Imagine the first time when they were on Earth and the Earth turned away from the sun and they said, well, I liked that thing in the sky, but it's gone now, right? Because their position had changed, so they started to doubt its existence. I don't know if that really happened, but you know, it happens to us all the time when there's a cloudy day. I spoke with somebody about a pilot the other day who said, whenever it's a cloudy day, all I need to do is fly above the clouds, and look, there's the sun. There's the sun. The sun always shines. The reason I'm using the sun as an analogy is that the other day I found myself getting angry at the sun. That ever happened to anybody? I didn't throw a temper tantrum or anything. I just was mildly irritated at the sun because I was turning out of my street and I had to turn against traffic into another lane, and there were people on a crosswalk and I couldn't see. The sun was in my eyes. It was just coming up and it was in my eyes, and I just remember saying, oh, I wish that sun would just go away for a minute, right? Well, for a minute. For a minute. Maybe a cloud passed in front of it, right? But I bring that up because, first of all, it's futile, right? The sun is not going to do what I tell it to do. But it's what we do to absolute reality all the time. Something just is, we form an opinion about it, and then we try and change it so that it's more convenient for us. Now, please tell me some of you have done that. Maybe not with the sun, but with something. You know, we often are in a wrestling match with absolute truth and absolute reality, trying to impose our own perspective, our own reality upon it, and call our own reality the truth, and this is the way everything should be. Now, the Ruiz boys talk about this in their book, when they talk about all of the assumptions that we make in life about the nature of being. He uses the Garden of Eden as an analogy. They talk about how in the beginning, you know, we consider the Garden of Eden an allegory. So in the beginning of that allegory, which is a teaching story, in the beginning, Adam and God were strolling around the Garden of Eden, and God said to Adam, I know, why don't you start naming all of the animals? And Adam said, oh, awesome, I'm going to do that. Okay, that thing over there is, let's call that a chicken, or a guinea pig. No, let's call it a guinea pig. And he named all of the animals. And the book says that that's an allegory for the way that we are made, that we are born into a blank slate. We are born into paradise, what could be paradise. But as soon as we're born, just by necessity, by the necessity of our survival, we have to start labeling things. We have letters, and then we have words. And the words are symbols. The words are not exactly what the thing is. They're a pointer to what we're talking about. The words don't actually capture what we're talking about, but they're symbols. And then we start to use the symbols and believe in them. We empower the symbols through our belief. We believe in these symbols, and then the symbols become truth for us. When the truth of the symbols is not really true. It's part of the truth, but it's not the entire truth. You know, in the past, I have you touch your elbow, and I say, are you touching your body? And you say yes. Most of you say yes, okay? And that's true, you're touching your body, but you're not touching your entire body, are you? And that's how it is with words and symbols in the absolute reality. It's like the words point to something, and there's a grain of truth in them, but it's not actually the absolute truth of anything. But the thing is that we latch onto those symbols as if they were the absolute truth. Now, many symbols in our life are very useful. I mentioned language before. Have any of you seen The Miracle Worker, the movie or the play? When, you know, the whole conflict of that play is, will Helen Keller, who was born blind and deaf, will she understand that these things that Annie Sullivan is putting into her hand does that have any meaning? And it's beautiful when she understands that this means water, and this means book, and this means Helen, and this means teacher. You know, it's a beautiful thing to have those symbols. Driving, also, we need symbols and we need agreements, right? Language is an agreement, and driving is an agreement. We need agreements that we all pretty much, for the most part, stay in our lanes and we drive a certain speed, and that a red sign that looks like this with the letters STOP means that we're supposed to stop. If you've traveled in other countries, you know that sometimes the agreements are not the same, you know? In India, I was going down a street once, and it was not the 405, but it was a highway, and then it got stopped up. And what did the guy do? He turned around in his lane and started driving the other direction. Can you imagine doing that on the 405? Not so much. So there are some symbols that are rational, that are very helpful. And then there are symbols that are highly irrational, but we still think they're truth. How many of you are aware of the orangutan that can predict the outcome of the Super Bowl? Evidently, I don't know if it's a male or I think it was a male, did it 8 years in a row. That male passed away, and now they have a new one. We'll see how he does. But people are counting on his prediction. And the way they agree that he predicted it is that they had placards and helmets in his little pen with him, and he kissed a panther's helmet, and then he ate the panther's placard. So that's a sign. The Panthers are going to win. If you're a betting person, go ahead, go for it. The orangutan said so. Then his sister, of course, messed it up and came in and put the other team, the Broncos, put their helmet on her head. So I don't know which symbol is stronger, but there are people there are people that are counting on those as symbols, as legitimate symbols. And what if some of the symbols that we carry with us are as powerful or as not powerful as the ability of an ape to pick the outcome of a Super Bowl? When somebody says to you, you're inadequate, those are just words, those are just symbols. What if they're really not as powerful as we make them to be? What if we say to ourselves, wow, I really failed, I really messed up? Those are just words, those are just symbols. Maybe they're not as powerful as we make them out to be. What if someone else says to us, the world is a mess, the world is in horrible shape, what is going on here? What if all of that is just symbols? And it's not as powerful as we make it up to be, because behind all of those symbols, there is an absolute reality that has got it all covered, that has our back, that knows exactly what it is doing. Now, the name of this talk is Skeptical About Scarcity. And I decided to talk about scarcity because scarcity is one of those stories that we tell ourselves that we really, really believe in. But what if it's a story? What if it's just made up? What if it's like that ape picking the outcome of the Super Bowl? Of course, if the Panthers win, you'll have to forget everything I said. However, what if? The stories that we have about scarcity are legion. There are so many of them. They usually boil down to there's not enough for everyone, there's not enough for me. And I'm not only talking about money, I'm talking about love or opportunity or abundance or forgiveness. There's not enough for me. I don't deserve it. That's another evidence of scarcity. I have to earn it in order to deserve it. And then perhaps the most prevalent, I am not enough. That's a huge, huge story about scarcity. Now, there's a saying that I read recently. It's going to sound a little harsh at first, but I'm going to explain what I think it really means. We don't believe in scarcity in this church. We say that scarcity is really abundance in disguise. But there's a saying that is, God always has enough for our need, but never enough for our greed. But let's define greed, because I doubt anybody here is a greedy person clutching and holding on to stuff. I think everybody here is probably pretty generous. Let's define greed as our perception of inadequacy. So God is always enough for our need, but God is never enough for our perception of inadequacy, because when we are perceiving inadequacy and empowering that perception with our belief, then we continue to find evidence of inadequacy all around us. We see it in the world, we see it in the world conditions, we see it in people who are hungry, we see it in our own perception of lack that we have in our lives. We continue to perceive inadequacy, and that makes it very real to us, when again, it may not be as real as we make it to be. It is not the absolute reality. The absolute reality contains both ebb and flow, but it is surrounded by this wholeness that encompasses everything that is opulent and abundant. Now, certainly, in this teaching, we talk ourselves out of the perception of inadequacy all the time. We do affirmations about abundance. We ask people to look at nature. Isn't nature a remarkable example of abundance? Who could count all of the grains of sand on the beach, or who could imagine that there are animals in the South American rainforest, or little tree frogs and bugs and bees and all kinds of things that we don't even know about? Who could imagine the vastness of the galaxy? Who can imagine the power and the vastness of the ocean, the things in the depths of the ocean that we don't even know about? There is vast abundance in nature, in the universe, in the world, and I'm just just scratching the surface of it with these words. There's also opulence in this world in terms of money. You know, I heard on the news the other day that the nosebleed seats at the Super Bowl are $3,500. There are people who are in a position or willing to do that. And to me, that's a lot of cash for a nosebleed seat. That's a car. So we can tell ourselves all of those things about abundance. And yet, it seems to me that the prevalent misperception about scarcity and lack is so powerful and so real. We've made it so powerful with our belief that maybe we should do something to shake ourselves up just a little bit more. I read this thing by Lynn Twist, who wrote a book called The Soul of Money, and I'd like to read the quote to you. She said, "When you let go of trying to get more of what you don't really need, it frees up immense energy to make a difference with what you have. When you let go of trying to get more of what you don't really need, it frees up immense energy to make a difference with what you have. When you make a difference with what you have, it expands. This opens the possibility of generating a new set of assumptions based on the principle of sufficiency for all for the 21st century. Because if I have sufficiency and somebody else doesn't, I'm not sure if I can define that as sufficiency anymore. I want sufficiency for all." So that's a great thought. That's a great thought. And in this teaching, you know, we constantly are telling ourselves, change your thinking, change your life. We think ourselves into a new way of living. I'm going to invite you to live yourself into a new way of thinking, into a new way of ferreting out your own personal beliefs in insufficiency and seeing if they can be transformed. It's a spiritual practice, and I'm going to share it with you. In the past several years or so, I have been very dedicated to my continuing education. It's very important for me, I feel, as the person who stands up here and speaks most Sundays, to have something to say. So I try and stay inspired, and I try and stay informed. This year, when I was meditating on what I might do for my continuing education, I got a very clear message, and it was stay close to home. Stay close to home and do something radical. And I said, oh, it's so much easier just to get on a plane and take a seminar. Come on, God. But no, I got stay close to home and do something radical. And I meditated on what that radical thing might be. And I got something that I really did not want to do, which means it's the thing that I'm supposed to do, usually in my case. And it just said, just give somebody a gift every single day for a whole year. Now, I'm not inviting you to start for a whole year. The good news is Fat Tuesday is coming up. Mardi Gras is this Tuesday. My dogs are already in their Mardi Gras collars. They're celebrating early this year, which means that Lent is starting on Wednesday. And Lent, you know, we're not traditionally a Christian church, but we celebrate some of the Christian holidays. I think Lent is a really powerful time. It's a real opening because a lot of people are praying and a lot of people are working on themselves. So what if for the next 40 days we could give 40 gifts? I started this because I wasn't going to talk about it unless I found it was doable. And it is doable, but it's provocative, it's challenging. So one of the things that I notice when I give and when I have the urge to give is that I often try and talk myself out of the urge to give. I have all kinds of reasons why I shouldn't do it. Some of you have been there. Lonnie has been there when I've tried to talk myself out of giving. You know, and I'm not Warren Buffett here, you know. I'm giving like a cookie or or I brought a Beanie Baby over to my neighbors, you know. I bought a a gross of toilet paper for Nipun Mehta's mother, who does meditations like Peter does in her home for like 60 people every Wednesday. And I'm like, wow, she must be running out of toilet paper by now. So I bought it and I sent it up to Santa Clara. She's going to get this package of toilet paper from a stranger. What the heck? So I'm doing things like that. I just meditated on it every day. But what happens with everything I do, and it gets easier, but with everything I do, I have some objection, some belief in scarcity as to why I shouldn't do it. If I give that Beanie Baby to that neighbor, they're going to want a relationship with me. I'm not sure if I'm ready for that, you know? The toilet paper, it's a kind of an odd gift. What will she think of me? The homeless guy, there's this homeless guy that I love the homeless, but this guy really works my nerves. He's kind of threatening and he's harassed me for years. And because I've been in this practice, I walked by him and instead of ignoring him, he asked me for money. And instead of just walking by and saying, have a good day, I said, I'm not going to give you money, but how about some food? And, and then I'm wandering around Vaughan's going, what was I thinking? I don't know what that guy likes. I'm going to get him the wrong thing, and then he's going to yell at me. And what happened proves that there is a God, because I got him, I'm pretty sure it was the wrong thing. I got him a bagel and a Coke. And when I brought it out, he wasn't there anymore. And then I'm going, what am I going to do with this bagel and this Coke? I don't eat either of those things. And lo and behold, this homeless guy that I've never seen before in Santa Paula comes up to me, and I said, here, this is for you. And it made his day. He got tears in his eyes, and he said, thank you for blessing the homeless today. So you see, there is a God. There is a God. But the point is not about how great I am and how generous I am. The point is about how much I struggle with this, even little things. Even giving someone a cookie for their birthday was a little bit of a struggle. You know, will everybody want a cookie then? I don't have a cookie for everybody. So it's just for all of that stuff that is scarcity to come up, to be examined, to be looked at, to be blessed, to be embraced, and then to be released if appropriate. The other thing that I've found that happens with this, two other things. The first thing is that so often, you know, in this busy, busy world, we wake up in the morning and our first thought is, oh my God, what is this day going to bring me? Right? And now with this concept of 40 gifts in 40 days, the thought upon wakening is very different. It's more like, oh my God, what am I going to bring this day? It's a beautiful way to go through life, because if you're looking for something to give, you're always looking for something to give rather than looking for something to get. And that is really the key to the kingdom of heaven. The other thing I've noticed, and I say this for a lot of you who are just incredible givers, who give so much more in your lives than I do. I know that there are people here that are taking care of young children or taking care of aging parents and people with all kinds of situations going on in their lives that are so challenging. And I've noticed that there are days when I do feel depleted and I feel like I can't give one more thing. I've been working all day. I've been helping people all day because of my work. I can't give one more thing. And then some days I double up and I give two things if it's one of those days. But often on those days I'll look and say, well, maybe you're not aware of how much you're giving. So it's a great opportunity to look at your life and say, what did I give today? Oh my goodness, I called that person out of the blue and gave them a prayer when they weren't even expecting it. I saw that person on the street that was troubled, and I took more time than usual just to tell them that everything was going to be okay. So it's a great affirmation of giving what you're already giving that is also a refusal to believe in the myth of scarcity. It is skepticism about scarcity. And you're not just giving it lip service, you are actually living it. You're actually living it. And that is the truth that sets us free. So, in terms of moving forward with this, if you want to play with me, I think we have some sheets of paper that have 40 gifts that are, and that's going like this, like an airplane pilot or something. They're somewhere. They're maybe in the bookstore and also at the front of the church. Did I get it right? They're at the long table in the social hall and at the front of the church. It's just a list of 40 lines where you can write down your 40 gifts. If you only give 20 gifts, that's fine. If you only give one gift, that's fine. It's just something to challenge yourself. On the back of it is the rest of that quote by Lynn Twist that I wrote. And I'm encouraging people to do it, to share your experiences with others. You know, we're supposed to be silent givers, but sometimes talking about our giving inspires other people. If you're on the Facebook page, if you're my Facebook friend, go ahead and tell me what you did on Facebook. Tell the church what you did on our Facebook page. If you're not my Facebook friend, feel free to friend me. I go by Bonnie Hess Rose, use my maiden name as well. And let's just see what we can accomplish. Because what I found about this practice, too, is that it's nonlinear. You know, I think, okay, I'm going to give this, and then I'm going to get that in return. But I feel my consciousness and my heart opening up in unseen and unexpected ways. And it feels so good. It feels so good to be more deeply connected to that absolute reality of openness and kindness and abundance and grace and joy. I want that for myself, but even more, I want that for you. I want that for you. So let's work on this practice together, if you so choose, and let's give ourselves away. Because when we give ourselves away, there's a paradox at play. When we give ourselves away, we get everything. Let's start now. Let us pray. So I turn within and absolutely trust to know that Spirit is in the house because God can't be anyplace else but right where we are and everywhere else. So I know and trust that there truly is one life. That life is God's life. That life is my life right now. That life is the life of all of us. And that powerful hearts are here today by divine appointment to lift each other up, to bless one another, to bless ourselves, and to bless the world around us. And so I know that the words that we have heard today and the music and the fellowship changes us from the inside out. It allows us to think ourselves into a new way of living and to live ourselves into a new way of thinking. That we begin to question our myths of scarcity. We develop healthy skepticism about what scarcity really is, and in so doing, we move into the spiritual truth that shines like the sun and the stars, that is like the moon, the earth, the ocean, this beautiful absolute that holds us tenderly, that is all things, that is wholeness, that is perfection, that is completion, that is eternal timelessness, that is the vastness and the spaciousness, that this is our true self, and that we can easily live from that true self, and we do. And so I know that giving is easy, that receiving is easy, that life is good for all of us, and that we are so deeply blessed. I am so grateful for this powerful teaching this morning, so grateful for this truth that we teach in this spiritual center. I bless all paths to God. I bless the transformation that has occurred in each church or synagogue or temple this morning. I bless fundamentalists and atheists, and I bless all beings, knowing that all beings are a blessing. I am so grateful for our lives, and so grateful for this opportunity to express the life of absolute love here on earth. And with a heart filled with gratitude, I say, thank you, Spirit, thank you, God, and I release these words into the mystery of the law, and together we say, and so it is. I am so blessed.
It's been raining on my birch tree, and it's sunny outside. It's been struggling this whole year, and a third of its branches have died. But in the middle of the afternoon last week, as I pondered its plight in vain, staring out from the shade of my patio umbrella, I swear to you it began to rain. Right there, right when it needed it, asking with no words. The universe heeded it out of a clear blue sky, not knowing how or why. Love comes pouring down, you can't explain, and it begins to rain. Nature's often the best teacher in lessons of taking things in stride, to graciously accept the blessings which without fail God will provide. And I'm thankful for the metaphor, didn't take a brick falling on my head, 'cause I'm lining up with raindrops falling from a blue sky instead. Right there, right when I need it, asking with no words. The universe heeds it, yes, out of a clear blue sky, not knowing how or why. Love comes pouring down, you can't explain, and it begins to rain. I've been wasting time with worry, wondering just how on earth I'd ever make it through with this miracle in view. I think I'll wash myself anew, knowing how you'd love a tree, how much more you're loving me. Right there, right when I need it, asking with no words. The universe heeds it, yes, out of a clear blue sky, not knowing how or why. Love comes pouring down, you can't explain, and it begins to rain. It's been raining on my birch tree, and it's sunny outside.
We'll sing. Please repeat after me. I am held in Spirit's holiness, divinely guided by wisdom, courage, and love. I am always connected. I see God in everything. I create joy on earth as I share my blessings. Thank you for my life. And so it is.